One of the great talking points of the last decade, certainly the last couple of years, has been this whole idea of becoming great again. It's a concept that has gotten a lot of attention throughout history. The kind of concept of greatness has gotten a lot of attention throughout history. But it seems like right now, the idea of becoming great again has never had this sort of intensity, right? The challenge is defining exactly what it means to have become great again. Now, big if we are professing to be followers of Jesus, it's probably kind of a good idea and kind of important to understand how Jesus might have defined what it means to become great again, if that's our intent. And it doesn't have to be, but if it is, seems like we'd want to know that. And the concern actually is a concern even the original disciples had. They called Jesus in Matthew 18. It says, they called him and they said, "Can you tell us what greatness, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Please tell us that. We want the picture." And when it happened, Jesus did something that's shocking. It was shocking. He called amongst them a child. A child. Now, that doesn't shock you. That's because you weren't living in Jesus' day. Today, I get it. We love kids. Kids are awesome. Kids are the greatest. In our culture, it would make all the sense in the world. And today we have pictures of Jesus loving all the little children, and we sing songs, and it's awesome because kids are the greatest. But you know what? That's what it was like in Jesus' day. In Jesus' day, they were worthless. They were worthless. They were chattel. They were property. They were the equivalent of owning a slave, except you had a slave that couldn't do any work because they were too small. All this person could do is cost you. They were the lowliest of the lowly, right? And this is who Jesus calls to himself, the lowest of the lowly. Somebody who is not even to be spoken to or heard from because they have no value. And Jesus says this. He says, "I'm telling you, unless you change," he's talking to his disciples now, "unless you followers of me change, unless you who profess to be intent on following me, unless you change, you have got to change. You, followers of Jesus I'm talking to now, you have got to change and become like this child, worthless, needy, vulnerable. Unless you change, you're not even going to enter the kingdom of heaven. Forget about being great in the kingdom of heaven. Unless you change, you're not even getting in." That's Jesus talking. That ain't me. Jesus said it, Matthew 18. Look it up. So, we do need, let me say it differently, we do need to become great again. Jesus would agree. Jesus did agree in Matthew 18. He might just disagree with what greatness might look like when it arrives, right? It's not security. It's not wealth. It's not strength. It's not power. It's not privilege. It's not influence. It's none of that stuff. In fact, it's the opposite of all of that stuff that we define what it means to be great again. He continues in verse 4, "Whoever takes the lowly position," this lowly position of a child, see, that's what that's the emphasis here, the lowly position. "Whoever takes the lowly position of this child, they are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Furthermore," Jesus says, "furthermore, whoever welcomes such a lowly, despicable person, whoever welcomes that lowly, despicable person in my name has also welcomed me." This was a big deal for Jesus. What's a big deal for Jesus is that if you don't welcome the lowly, right, you have not welcomed. If you don't embrace my understanding of great, if you don't embrace greatness as I'm telling you about it, you are not embracing me. And frankly, folks, welcoming the lowly and useless is not a terribly popular idea today. Right? That's not our vision of what it means to become great again. In fact, our vision of becoming great again often results in us purging them from our world because they're a drain on our systems. They consume our taxes. They drain our resources. They require help and health care and clothes and food and all the stuff that we can't share. And Jesus notes, if you purge the lowly because they are expensive, you are in fact purging me. I didn't say it. Jesus said it. Look it up, right? In fact, when I look up someplace else, he also said it in Matthew 25. Great story. Matthew 25, he describes the fact that when I come again, there's going to be angels with me, and I will be sitting on my glorious throne. That's what greatness looks like, isn't it? A glorious throne and angels and power and strength. And Jesus says, all nations will be gathered before me. That's power. That's respect. That's influence. That's what greatness means in our world. And Jesus then says this, and I'm going to separate people. I am. That's what Jesus, read it yourself, Matthew 20. I'm going to separate people. And I'm going to separate people on how they embraced greatness, how they embraced what it means to become great again in the kingdom of heaven. I'm going to separate people. And Jesus says, I'm going to call people together. And I'm going to separate them, sheep, like shepherds separate sheep and goats, right? I'm one on one side, one on the other. And he's going to say to those, blessed are you. You are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance to those on my right, he'll say. Because I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat, he'll say to them. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I was a stranger. You didn't know me. You couldn't trust me. I was only there to consume your resources. And instead of purging me from your world, he says, you invited me in, and you fed me, and you gave me something to drink, and you clothed me. You took care of me while I was sick, and you looked after me while I was in prison, and even while I was in prison. And the people will say, dude, when did we see you in prison? When did we see you hungry and feed you? What are you talking about? And when did we see you thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in? And Jesus says, whatever you did to one of the least of these, whatever you did to them, you did to me. However, if you purge them, if they come to you hungry and you don't feed them, if they come to you unclothed and you don't clothe them, if they come to you a stranger and you do not invite them in, but instead purge them from your world, if they come to you in those ways and you reject them, you have also, he said, rejected me. How we embrace what greatness looks like in the kingdom of heaven reflects how we embrace Jesus himself. I didn't say it. He said it. Now, I'm not recommending you follow Jesus. I think oftentimes it's a pretty bad idea to pursue that kind of greatness. In fact, Jesus himself will warn people against following him. He'll warn them off. He's going to say, you better count the cost because it's expensive. The lowly child is a drain on your system. The stranger is a drain on your system. The hungry, a drain on your system. These are all drains on your system, people. So you better count the cost. But, he said, his harshest words were for people who profess to be following. So if you don't want to follow him, no problem. All right? I get it. He gets it. But the biggest concern Jesus has is if you profess to be following him. If you say you're following him and you're embracing any other kind of greatness, then Jesus says, woe to you. Woe to you. You better not be telling people you're following me and do anything other than what I've prescribed right here. Welcoming in the stranger, clothing the naked, feeding the poor. That is how you embrace greatness. And if you say you're following, if you say you're following me and you're not doing this stuff, you're not following me. And woe to you, because it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad, he said. Yeah, it's going to be bad. I didn't say it. He said it. So, if we are following Jesus, and we don't have to, if we are following Jesus, then greatness is sacrificial. Greatness is sacrifice for the lowly. Sacrifice for people who don't deserve it. Sacrifice for people we can't trust. In fact, it's for prisoners. And what we tend to do with prisoners, we tend to make those people who are wrongly, imprisoned wrongly, people who are good people, but are imprisoned for bad reasons, right? And Jesus, that's not what he said. These people are there probably because they've done some bad stuff. And Jesus says, if you have visited them, those bad people, you've visited me. And remember here too, remember this. If you are sacrificing for the lowly, if you are embracing this level of greatness, even if you are not conscientiously or consciously attempting to follow Jesus, if you have still accepted Jesus in your heart, even if that wasn't your intent. Sorry to say. Even if you don't want to follow Jesus, even if that's not your profession, if you are accepting the lowly, even if you are embracing this level of greatness, if you are feeding the poor, if you are visiting the prisoner, if you are welcoming in the stranger and the alien, if you are doing those things, you're doing it to Jesus. Okay? If you are accepting those people into your heart, even if you don't want to accept Jesus in your heart, if you're accepting them, then guess what? You have accepted him. Likewise, if we think we've accepted Jesus in our heart and we purge those people from our heart, from our lives, we have, in fact, purged Jesus.